CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on today's episode of the podcast, I'm joined by me, myself, and I. It was too hard to get a guest here, but this week I wanted to give a precursor and basically talk about the Oklahoma State versus Central Michigan game one night on the eve of the game, one night beforehand. So anyways, we start off the podcast here in the future. If anyone ever wants to join, please let me know. Shoot me a DM on Twitter, Instagram, or my number, either way, at the CGA Tour on all social media platforms there as well, too. But with that being said here, let's go ahead and hop into it. So Oklahoma State coming in playing Thursday night football against Central Michigan. The foe that we didn't think would be the foe. Is the best way to say it. I remember the last time that we played Central Michigan was in Stillwater, and I did work for OSU Athletics at the time. Probably should have ran out there and tripped the Central Michigan guy who's running in for the touchdown. Don't think I would have caught up to him, especially back then, but nonetheless here. So a couple things here with this game, and I've got some questions from a couple of listeners here as well to kind of add in and sprinkle in as well, just so that it's not me monologuing for the entire time, even though I would be okay with that normally. But with that being said, Central Michigan has one key thing that Oklahoma State can just prey on the entire time and should be a great thing for us the whole season, honestly, is because our defensive line is incredibly good. And the offensive tackles for Central Michigan are new. That's basically the deal here. So, I mean, Trace Ford coming back fully healthy, missed all of last season. You've got Colin Oliver, of course, anchoring the defensive side of it. But I'm even forgetting about a couple of guys here, right? Normally, you think about Oklahoma State team, it's all offense. Then last year, we had the switch over to defense. So, all right, let's see here. What can we do? Well, the matchup for this game will feature Oklahoma State's two deep rotation of defensive ends that include freshman All-American, on all-conference first-teamer, and two All-Big 12 honorable mentions. And they'll be facing a Central Michigan offensive line that has to replace both starters at tackle. This is word for word from pistolsfiringblog.com. Marshall Scott, good friend of the program here, a good friend of the tour. So using a lot of their information here, going back and forth, the depth charts, all that type of stuff too. So if you haven't already, check out pistolsfiringblog.com and say what's up to Marshall as well here. But basically, you got Colin Oliver, Brock Martin, Trace Ford, and Tyler Lacey. All just a great defensive line here for OSU. And they should really be able to tear into that Central Michigan offensive line that's replacing both their starters at tackle. Now, with that being said, Central Michigan does return with the nation's leading rusher and the majority of their tier reps at the interior offensive line. So Nichols III is a guy who racked up more than 1,800 yards and 16 touchdowns last year, 7 straight games of over 100 yards down the stretch. He also hauled in 40 catches and 2 more TDs with those catches as well. So number 7 for CMU is going to be one of those guys that tomorrow should be the tackles. It should be the tackles that are the weak points in that offensive line, and there should not be any room for number 7 on CMU to get down the field, get ahead of steam. But all that being said, I'm sure CMU is scheming towards that. They know what their weaknesses are. So this is going to be much more of a how good can we do with our current setup, right? And let's be honest here. We've got to replace some defensive guys. And by some defensive guys, I mean the back end of the defense has transferred, graduated, or gone pro. And sometimes all 3 of those, right? Devin Harper, well, he's over in Washington. Malcolm Rodriguez of Hard Knocks fame now is maybe the starting linebacker or one of the starting linebackers for the Detroit Lions. And then Tanner McAllister is no longer with OSU either. So there's quite a lot of room here for current defensive guys to pop up, make a name for themselves there on the outside. Now, with that being said, CMU doesn't bring a lot of their returning wide receivers back. In fact, they only bring a couple back who are both very young. And in fact, they're so young, it's not even worth mentioning because there's like a list of them. We're not exactly sure we're going to see tomorrow. I'm sure there are starters, but you know what? It's just not worthwhile as far as going through all of CMU's wide receiver list here and speculating, because we don't even know who's going to be playing for sure on the defensive side for us at starting cornerback. Now, when I say for sure, I do want to be clear. There is not a chance in the entire world that I'm picking CMU over Oklahoma State. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if I don't pick basically Oklahoma State this entire season, 12-0. But if you listen to the College Football Preview podcast, anyone can tell I did not do that, unfortunately. I think we'll lose to either OU, Texas, Baylor, one of those three, maybe two. I don't want to put a name down, a finger down on it, because you know what? I'm not a gambling person myself whatsoever, and I don't want anyone to take my advice on it if they do gamble. So I think Oklahoma State here has a really good shot to be at CMU tomorrow. Score prediction wise, I was asked that here, so I want to make sure to get to that as well too. And a lot of the generating like models that you can find online, basically for okay, what's the predictions here? What's the possibility? What could be happening? Is OSU mid 30s, right? Points wise, CMU mid 20s points wise from a lot of models that are being put through, all type of stuff too. I'm going to go about that same here. I'm going to say Oklahoma State 38, CMU 22. Very odd score overall. I mean, that's, 5 touchdowns for us and a field goal or a combination of stuff. CMU, that's kind of a couple weird things happening for the 22. So don't hold me to it, but that's what kind of feels right at this point. I'm really high on Oklahoma State this year. I don't know why I wouldn't be, because basically you've got a couple different things going for Oklahoma State. 1, returning quarterback. 2, returning some of the offensive line players. And 3, you're returning an incredible starting defensive line. The things that are not looking good for Oklahoma State here is that you're replacing the back end of the defense, new defensive coordinator, new key running back, like new starting running back, Jalen Warren's with the Steelers. So I'm going to keep throwing in as many name drop NFL players as I can from the Oklahoma State roster last year to show how good it was. But by the same point, Ollie Gordon, Dominic Richardson, the transfer from A&M, who's unfortunately not with the roster at this point, but he will be. He is on the roster, but it's just kind of he's passing through some scholarship or transfer protocol issues or something like that. There's a transcript issues last thing I saw. But before I forget here, I do want to also get to the CMU team. Last year they went 9-4 overall. In conference, they're 6-2. And Jim McElwain is their head coach. I'm not going to say that doesn't scare me. Like, they have a coach who has taken Florida to 2 SEC championships, and in fact 2 straight. And yeah, you know what? Like, in Jim's 3 years there at CMU so far, he's won at least a share of 2 division titles, went to 2 bowls. It's 2013 record overall and a 15-7 clip in conference. But they haven't been able to take that extra step to win the conference title. Although, as anyone knows, and has just kind of that heartbreak feeling from the untimed down play with Mason Rudolph, throwing it into the abyss and then getting a flag where CMU then gets 1 play. This is not a game that I take lightly. This is not a game that OSU is overlooking. This is a game where if you can just tear their head off, right, figuratively, let's go for it. Let's do it. We're Oklahoma State. We are a Big 12 team. They are not a Big 12 team. They are the MACtion team that we know. They are a MAC school, and I cannot tell you how annoying it was to work in Detroit with a couple other CMU grads, put an OSU helmet on my desk, and have people go, "Oh, hey, did you go to OSU? Do you remember that game?" It's like, yeah, I was on the sideline for that game. In fact, probably would have not been working for OSU Athletics if I had actually run out there and tried to do something, because I would have failed at it. 1, I'm not a football player. But 2, it stinks. It really stinks. It'd be nice to be able to go, yeah, but you know what? We got the best record here. We should have the best record against you guys. You should never have won a game. But it just would be so nice to not think about CMU anymore after this game and end it with a win. So, other 3 questions I have here coming in is offensive line. So, question here is, are we going to be able to protect Spencer Sanders this year, or is he going to continue to have to create time like last year? Josh Sills was a key component of our offensive line last year. He is now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Told you I was going to keep that motto going here. So we've got a couple guys here on the roster for OSU that are coming back that are good players. Like, great players is a strong word. Good players is a great word for this. All right. There's no idea in my mind where I don't think Spencer Sanders can create a little bit of extra time. He can roll around the pocket. He definitely is more of a running and mobile quarterback than he is like, a true pocket passer. I'll tell you what, he is able to get the ball out quick. And if he's able to dice up that Notre Dame defense and bring that same energy from last year's Fiesta Bowl into this year, let him loose. Like, let's roll with that, because the Oklahoma State offense that was in the first half of that Fiesta Bowl was way different than the whole second half of that Fiesta Bowl. We had to come back and make it work. So there's a lot in my mind here where it's, okay, are we going to be able to really do much here? Are we going to be able to have a great offensive line? And I think we will. I don't think there's a lot in me that goes, oh no, OSU's offensive line is horrible or it's that bad. But it just is never as good as I think it's going to be. I read, hear, see a lot of hype all about OSU's offensive line. Every year it seems like, oh, offensive line guys are great. Offensive line guys are great. But I'm going to read off the starters here on the depth chart as of 2 days ago. And I don't know a name. I know one name. So Caleb BTN, know he's a transfer. Guy is 6'7", now 325. Monster of a dude. But he didn't start last year when he theoretically could have and was competing for that starting left tackle spot. He's starting this year at left tackle. He is a redshirt junior. So we'll have to see how he plays. Then you've got a guy who's left guard, redshirt junior as well. Taylor Milikro. I'm definitely mispronouncing that, but I'll work on it. Get way better here by the end of the season. 6'6" guy. All right. Huge guy as well. 295, redshirt junior. So there's definitely some experience here, but not a name I remember. Center, Preston Wilson, 6'5", 295. All right. So our offensive line, we're kind of improving the position here where we have much bigger guys here on the offensive line year over year. But you know what? That's not Godlewski. And Godlewski was definitely our starting center for a lot of games last year until he was injured. So that worries me a little bit. Preston Wilson's a new guy. But again, redshirt junior. So I want to come back to that. A lot of experience, been around the program. Right guard, Hunter Woodard. That name does sound very familiar. He's 6'5". He's a redshirt senior. Definitely expect big things out of our right guard and our left tackle so far. And then our right tackle, Jake Springfield, redshirt junior. So the offensive line for OSU, every single guy has redshirted at least a year, which is great. And we've got all juniors and one senior. So you would think year over year, that would be a recipe for success like no other. I do think it will be a recipe for success. And I don't think Spencer Sanders will have to roll around the pocket, create too much time at the beginning of the season when we face weaker opponents. And hopefully by the end of the season, coming down the stretch, it's not going to be easy. I mean, Texas always has good guys on defense. You've got Baylor with a good defensive line. We knew that last year. We knew that way too well in that Big 12 championship game. So, you know what? Let's see how it works out. We'll be all right. I think we'll make it through. And injuries are a key thing here, keeping everyone healthy. For every team's going to say that. But man, the offensive line for us was just not able to stay healthy at the end of last season. And man, one or two things go differently, and we have a couple other guys starting the offensive line stay healthy. Then all of a sudden, you know what? Maybe we have a Big 12 championship. And all of a sudden, then we're going to the Sugar Bowl, and who knows, right? So a lot of different things here with that. But I think Sanders will have to create a little bit of time here and there because that's just what he likes to do. But also our offensive line is some guys that are new stepping in here, but they're all well experienced. Defense. Was it Coach Knowles that had us playing so well, or is it our system we've created? I think Knowles did great things for our defense. I think Knowles made great strides for the defense. I think we also had great players on the defense too. I mean, I can go through like 3 or 4 different guys in my head right now that are in the NFL playing defense. And that's great. Like, that's not the Oklahoma State team I know. That's not the Oklahoma State Cowboys that I know of old, right? Like, I mean, it's one of those things where we're good on defense. I think year in, year out, we've been all right. We've relied on takeaways a lot of the time. And then last year, we were just shutting out teams. We shut out Texas Tech, shut out a couple other teams too. It was incredible. But it's not fair for me to go, oh, our defense is going to be just as good. It's not. It's going to be a learning curve. I do not expect us to be shutting out Central Michigan tomorrow, even though I'd love it. We have got great guys on the defensive line. At linebacker, we've got Xavier Benson, got Mason Cobb. Cornerback, we've got Corey Black, who was with the program last year. We also have Thomas Harper, which is Devin Harper's younger brother, who was again with the program last year. Both those guys are junior and senior, respectively. Safety, Kendall Daniels, redshirt freshman, starting. So always a little worried with that. But you know what? Jason Taylor, also starting safety, redshirt senior. Jason Taylor is one of those guys where I could easily see him being the MVP of this whole team when we're said and done. He could be the Malcolm Rodriguez of this season. Now, granted, to be the biggest name on the defensive side because he makes impactful plays. The defensive linemen, the defensive tackles, we know to expect a lot out of them. But Jason Taylor always comes up with big plays. He gave a huge play 2 years ago against K-State. And then last year, he has a couple of huge plays. He deflects a field goal against Boise State last year. He also intercepts, I believe, a pass or gets a fumble from UT last year and runs it back and really changes the momentum too. So great things there. And then at corner, Corey Black, Jordan Reagan, Jabbar Muhammad, DeMarco Jones. So that's kind of the deal here. But Jabbar Muhammad and Corey Black are the two starting guys. Then last question I have here is Dominic Richardson. Is he our guy? I don't think it's going to matter. I think at running back specifically, there are 4 guys listed. There's Dominic Richardson, who, of course, junior, been with OSU. Jaden Nixon, redshirt freshman, who, of course, redshirt didn't play last year, but a lot of good things hearing from him. But then there's an or Ollie Gordon or DeAndre Jackson. DeAndre Jackson's the A&M transfer. He's not going to play tomorrow. Ollie Gordon, I think, could see some minutes tomorrow, could see some snaps, but it's going to be running back by committee. I don't think Dominic Richardson has to be our guy, and I don't think he will be. I think we've got too talented of a running back room to just use Dominic Richardson as the featured back, kind of like how we used Jalen Warren last year. I think we're going to mix it all in and really have a great offensive running back room. So there's a couple other things I want to add in here for the podcast. Just kind of news and notes as well here too, because let's face it, like I've been monologuing now for a little bit. Score prediction, 38-22 OSU tomorrow. Game is at 6 o'clock Central, so 4 o'clock Pacific, which makes it a little tough, but we'll see. And then, of course, you've got an incredible couple games here coming up this weekend. You got Georgia versus Oregon, which I normally would ask, hey, what are the picks from me and the guest? But you know what? There's no guest. So we're just going to get rolling with it. If you want shout out predictions or so on Twitter at the CGA Tour or on Instagram at the CGA Tour as well, please let me know. The other things I could say here is like, all right, you know what? Kickoff return, Brendan Presley, and punt return, Brendan Presley. Of course. Younger brother is not named on either of the kick return or punt return. And then other kind of things from the roster here real quick as I kind of wrap this one up here. Make it a short podcast, but always a good one, is our wide receivers. It's a brand new deal with the wide receivers, except for 2 guys, Brendan Presley and Braden Johnson. So Braden Johnson comes back, redshirt senior. Brendan Presley, of course, a junior, both very familiar. Jaden Bray, sophomore, making big names. Bryson Green's listed right underneath them as sophomore as well. Rashad Owens, redshirt sophomore. Kate Cabness, redshirt sophomore. And, John Paul Richardson, the guy who helped seal the OSU game last year against Boise State when a lot of the wide receivers were out because they were sick or COVID protocols, etc. So a lot of fun there too with the wide receiver room, and a lot of guys. We'll see how they step up. You know, we got one of the Shretten brothers, excuse me, Talon was on the roster too here. At least on the depth chart, is what I should say. Roster is not the right word. Depth chart is. I should have said that more often. But you know what? I'm feeling good about this Oklahoma State team. Of course, night before the game, it's game 1 eve. And I don't know. Feeling good about it. I think Oklahoma State has a great chance to win. I think we have a great chance to win. And let's see. You know what? Let's have fun. Let's get ready. Football's back. College football's back for sure. And I just cannot wait at all here for an Oklahoma State win tomorrow night in Stillwater at 6 o'clock, where by the time the game's over, it'll be pitch black, neon black skies. It'll be a lot of fun. So that was a short podcast. Feel free to shoot me any questions here for week 2's game against Arizona State, September 10th. And I'll be back here with the game recap after the Central Michigan game at some point thereafter. So thank you so much for listening. Catch you guys again soon. Peace.